Spring is here, which means you might be training for a spring marathon, or you might possibly have a fall marathon on deck. Here are 6 strategies on how to avoid hitting the wall in your next marathon. What exactly is hitting the wall? Hitting the wall is when your glycogen stores in your muscles deplete at a greater rate than what you are taking in. So as a runner going through workouts and training runs, and especially that 26.2 miles, you will want to ensure that you're taking in enough carbohydrates to fuel your glycogen stores and make sure that you don't deplete too fast or too quickly during the course of the 26.2 miles. So strategy number 1 is long runs are so important, as well as practicing some fast finishes. So it depends on the type of athlete that you are, and if this is your first marathon, or if maybe this is the marathon where you're saying, I'm going after that BQ, I'm going after that NYQ, let's go. So you really want to focus in on, there's a few different points in the training cycle that you want to focus in on, but the long run is going to be one of the most important pieces to running a strong marathon and making sure that you get in the right type of long runs and that you peak at the time that you're supposed to be peaking, which can be 3 to 4 weeks before the race, and making sure that all those long runs are consistent. They get to be, a lot of them are just easy miles. Some of them might have some goal pace or some marathon goal pace inside of them. And the other piece too, running a great 26.2 is practicing a fast finish. At the end of your long run, let's say you're running a 3-hour long run, which could be the equivalent of 20 to 22, 23 miles, depending on your speed. It can be tough. Your legs are going to be tired, you're going to be tired, but practicing that leg turnover at the very end of your long run, and maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's a mile, maybe it's 2 miles, anything faster than marathon pace, which usually can come in around half marathon pace. And I haven't seen anyone truly ever run something faster than that because the legs are fatigued, not just from the long run, but also from the training cycle. Next up, we have throw yourself a carb party. That's right. So like I mentioned earlier, the glycogen stores are going to be key, and having full glycogen stores are going to be key to setting you up for success for a strong 26.2 miles. A carb party is so much fun. It gets to be done definitely on race week. If you want to apply a 3-day carbo load, Megan Featherston on her website has an amazing calculator on how to calculate exactly how many carbohydrates per day you're going to need. I've also seen runners take the approach of just upping their carbohydrate intake over the course of the entire week. That also works. I would play around with it. What I love most about training is that we get to train all of this. So practice it in training, practice it before one of your long runs, whether it's one day or maybe it's over the course of 2 or 3 days to really hone in on that carbo loading that you'll be doing on race week. It's gonna allow you to indicate what's working, what's not working, and then shift things so you can set yourself up for success on race day. Tip is to definitely write it down. It might feel like you're getting in enough carbohydrates or calories overall. Typically, we find as runners is that we're not taking enough in, and that it is going to be something that we need to really focus in on and plan out and make sure that we know what we're doing and how we're doing it. You also want to focus in on those simple carbohydrates. So think cereal, breads, pastas, very simple to digest, and leaving some of the complex carbohydrates for after your run. All right, next up, we have understanding your true fitness. I see this all the time. I love tracking athletes, whether they're the runners that I coach or friends, or maybe it's Instagram friends. And it's so fun to track people on race day. And it's so sad to see the first half of a race go so well and then to see the wheels fall off. Typically what happens is that the pace the athlete or the runner went out at was too fast, and that can get to all of us, that can get the best of us. I think a lot of us have been there. I know I have been there in more marathons than not. So I'm going into my 7th marathon this year, and I have executed the 26.2 miles well only twice out of those 6 times. So my first marathon, which was CIM, and then my 5th marathon, which was the Chicago Marathon in 2022, which is also the race that holds my current PR. So it can be something that you practice. It can be practicing your paces in your long run as that progression, right? Not getting too excited, staying focused in on that first half. You want to feel good at the halfway point. And then after that, let it go, let it rip, see what happens. And if you have a race plan, try and stay as close to that race plan as possible. I think we all know that once we get to the mile 20, that is when the race officially begins. So if you do feel strong, that's the time to just let it rip. All right, so now you also want to understand not just your fitness, but also how to pace yourself, right? So the last step was all about understanding your fitness, where you're at. And now this step is all about pacing. So again, not starting out too fast, making sure that that first half feels easy, making sure that you understand what shape you're in to get to that desired outcome goal, and then chunk up the race, right? I love that so much. Chunking up the race, especially in the marathon, makes it feel easier to get through. I will usually chunk it up in either 5Ks or 10Ks. It all depends on the course too. Boston is its own beast, and that has a very complex chunking system. And it is something, every race course is going to be different, but set yourself up for success on what's going to work best for you. Practice it in training. Be patient and understand that if you can hold back a little bit in that first half of the marathon and feel good, you're going to most likely negative split the second half and not hit the wall, which is all what we don't want. Next step number 5 is to fuel well and to fuel often. So it goes back to the carb party. It goes back to the glycogen stores. You want to make sure that when you're on the course, you're fueling your body for exerting energy for 26.2 miles. So that could look like 3 hours. That could look like 3:30, 4 hours, 4.5 hours, 5 hours. It's all going to look different for each one of us. But know that you need to have and get to continuously take fuel in during the run. I really like to chunk up my race by 5Ks because that's usually when I take a gel, and I love the Spring Energy gels. First and foremost, out of the gate, I love to preload my gels. I love to take in a little bit more in that first half. And then once the jitters are out, once I get past that halfway point, I settle into the pace, I settle into the groove, and then I start to evaluate, do I want to take another gel at the 5K or do I want to stretch it out just a few minutes to that 4-mile mark? You're going to set yourself up for success if you practice fueling and training and know what works for you, know what works for your body. And another pro tip that I love for the marathon distance is taking a caffeinated gel, and I'm talking about the Morton's 100, which is 100 milligrams of caffeine. I do this in all of my long runs, and then of course on race day, I will take that gel at miles 15, 16-ish, depending on where I am in that 5K to 4-mile spectrum. And that caffeine hits right around mile 20, exactly when you need that extra boost, which can be really exciting if it works and if you feel strong. And lastly, control what you can control, right? We go into these races with great training, with a good race kit. We have practiced with our shoes. We have our hydration and our nutrition dialed. Control all of that. Control the mindset, control the pacing, and you will give yourself the best absolute chance to avoid hitting the wall, right? What we don't want to do is maybe start the race unfocused. Maybe start it feeling really nervous. And then we might go out too fast. We might be running too fast, or hey, For Boston, which was number 6 for me, this was my second Boston. It was marathon number 6. And I got stuck into, Boston's like very crowded for anyone running it. And I got stuck in what was the 3:15 group, and I could not break away for the life of me. It was very, very challenging. And so I never even got to marathon pace or the pace that we were training for during Boston prep last year. So it's wild. Know that each and every single training cycle is going to be different. How you show up on race day is going to be different every single time. And I think when you do get that unicorn style race where your training has come together, you're feeling confident, the race weather's good, and your body feels good and you're feeling good, absolutely trust yourself and just go for it. You have nothing to lose. Except maybe hitting the wall, right? Which is not exactly what we want to do, but chances are if everything's aligned and you don't go out too fast, you're gonna have one of your strongest races yet, which is very, very exciting, especially when it comes to 26.2 miles. So these are my 6 strategies on how to avoid hitting the wall, which is when your glycogen stores deplenish and your pace changes from maybe it's goal marathon pace, and then all of a sudden in that next mile you're running 30, 45, 60, 2 minutes different than marathon pace. It doesn't feel good. I've been there. It does not feel good. It feels like you're absolutely crawling, and the rest of the race is a mental and physical battle as well. So I hope these tips helped, and thanks